Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and we got our hour-long program tonight. We're going to get into some rather odd stuff as well. A lot of things going on everywhere, and a lot of it is behind the scenes. A lot of it isn't, and I want to concentrate somewhat because Augusto had an interview here with a fellow that's done a lot of research on a destroyer. So when we get around to the destroyer, I want to read some things out of the Book of the Colburn and why Jesus Christ came down here to rescue mankind, because there is no escape from this. And it's already, the preliminary signs is outlined in the Book of the Colburn, which is really a collection of very ancient documents. It's not a Bible per se, it's just a collection of documents. But they record what was going on at the time the destroyer came through a long time ago. Anyway, I want to start with Isaiah chapter 24. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. As it shall be, as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury to him. The land shall be utterly emptied, utterly spoiled, for the Lord has spoken this word. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languishes and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore has the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it. It shall fall, and not rise again. Hi, Larry. What do you think of that little verse, or verses?
Hey, Stuart. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It reminds me of the book of Zephaniah, where a lot of things that didn't occur under the original deluge in Genesis actually comes to a head.
Yes. It's amazing verse. I mean, here we're talking about, and science totally denies this, even rogue scientists. As far as I know, even like Dr. Paul LaViolette said, I can't find any proof that the world literally turned upside down, and yet the ancients all, with one accord, claim that not only did it once, it's done it several times. The Chinese legends say that the sun rose in the west and set in the east twice. So, yeah, that's a flip, as Red Oak said. And he said there's one approaching. Edgar Casey's another one who claimed there was one approaching. In fact, he even named some of the volcanoes that would start to go off. Etna was one. Mount Pelée was another one. And like you have said on many a program, volcanoes are just going off all over the place now. These are all kind of preliminary signs of an earth flip. And that's what Isaiah chapter 24, which I advise everybody to read, is talking about. And there aren't really many survivors. So, but anyway, I want to get back to that later. Let's go to Turkey, because there's something going on there. What's the latest? I understand they, on our last program, we said that Turkey was going to invade Syria, but now I understand they have. I don't see it on the news, but inside reports are saying that's happened. Is that correct?
Well, that's some of the reports are coming out now. As you remember, on our last broadcast, we talked about that NATO had been informed by Turkey that Turkey was going to invade Syria and attack the Kurds, and that Trump had given the Kurds these man-pad defense weapons to shoot down Turkish planes or Syrian or take out their tanks, et cetera, et cetera. And Turkey was mobilizing at the time their military, and now there are reports that they have flights over that part of Syria. And now the Syrian government under Assad has came out and threatened to shoot down Turkish planes. So this is building by the day. And at the same time, we have not abandoned our bases, in Turkey. In our bases in Syria, and that is what Turkey's aiming for. We've got a crisis developing right there, and of course that ties in Russia, ties in Iran. This is of course, Israel is connected basically to this whole thing, and this is building by the day, and we're not hearing any of this in American news. American news is just void of anything but, I guess, all this smoke being created by the Democrats and Republicans at the moment.
Yeah, maybe it's all diversionary tactics. Who knows? But I was reading that Turkey had already begun shelling into Syria. But, so they're getting in preparation. Maybe they're already across the border and moving in. But that, you're right, that would then bring in, I would think that would bring in Moscow and Putin. Right? Because after all, he wasn't. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand about America being in Syria. We are not invited, and we're never invited, into a sovereign nation called Syria. We've walked in there on our own, and we're in total violation of international law. Russia, on the other hand, was invited in by Assad, and whether American government likes Assad or not, he is the legitimate ruler of Syria, and he had every right to invite Putin and the military, or Soviet military, into Syria to help him. So here we go. And, of course, we know that Iran's deeply involved in all of this. Yeah, this is probably going to escalate over the next few weeks. What do you think? The way it looks, they're already shelling, so they're getting ready to advance.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, and as a matter of fact, basically Iraq now is under Iran because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard under Soleiman have basically taken over the oil areas of Iraq and have run a road almost down to the Golan Heights and away to the Mediterranean. And so, this is a big deal going on. And, of course, Israel is on a day-to-day basis with wondering when the new war with Hezbollah and Hamas will start that is directed by Iran. And at the same time, there are reports that the Turks are moving a lot of forces, in that region. So, this whole thing is just building. It's building by the day, and a lot of our data that we're sharing with people is probably at least 24 hours or old or more, because it takes so much time now to develop stuff out of the Middle East, especially with American news not covering hardly anything.
Yeah. Have you heard anything from your people in Israel about what's going on there? I know they've been having drills all the time, and I guess, go underground, get your gas mask and all that, because they do fear an attack. Have you heard any more from anybody out there at all?
No, it's still going on. They've been told there's going to be a war, and pretty much everyone in Israel understands that. In America, we're just like Hawaii. They get a report that a missile's been launched. So here they are putting kids in serve drains. I mean, America is no more ready for an attack of any kind from anywhere at all. And Israel lives on that. They have lived with that every day for years and years and years, and every time they respond to an attack, they're always told they're the aggressors. So, and a matter of fact, there's something interesting coming out. I want to say it before I forget.
Yes.
There is a report that the EU, or the members of the EU now, are holding a conference, possibly with the UN, to confront the Israeli Jerusalem situation and try to negate that. So there's a continual attack on Israel, and I guess the Trump administration's pivot towards Israel. This is under constant attack. And it's Spirit, it's actually part of the Psalm 2 war that you spoke of. That's exactly where it goes back to.
Yeah. If people really want to know, go back to Psalm 2, read it, and then every Latter-day prophecy kind of comes out of that route or root of Psalm 2. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to remove Jesus Christ and remove God the Father and remove the Holy Ghost. That is the ultimate goal of all of this. And so everything you see is related back to that one goal, even if it doesn't look like it. It looks like, we're just fighting here and we're fighting there. Wars everywhere, and the human race just can't get along. But the ultimate goal of the deep state or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, is actually to get rid of the Bible, get rid of all thoughts of Christianity. What's interesting, Larry, is that we have all these reports of UFOs, landings, abductions, channeling, and with one accord, and it seems rather odd that people, aliens, we know they're fallen angels, but let's call them what the world calls them, these so-called aliens, seem to be bent upon destroying the name of Jesus Christ. Isn't it odd that they would travel billions of light years just to attack the name of Jesus Christ? I mean, you would think that would be a tip-off to people. Why would they travel all that way, light years away, just to, spit on that name? Just seems odd. You would think they'd want to know why all this attention on this one name. They don't do it for Allah. They don't do it for Confucius. They don't do it for any other religious leader that's come down the pike. Just one name. Do you find that a little odd?
Well, I find that rather telling, and as a matter of fact, I'll mention this. You got to remember, Turkey and Iran and all of them are after the Kurds. Now, if you go back to just a little bit of history, the Kurds are the only group that actually tried to save any Christians from the ISIS forces that were destroying them and killing them. And so they're under attack. And at the same time, Israel has tried to help some of the Druze Christians over in Syria on the Golan, and they're under attack. And, well, I know it hadn't clicked with people yet, but if people don't think that the focus of the current or the previous administration under Obama and Hillary Clinton and possibly what was going to be her new government, the left and the Democrats and Republicans, if the focus wasn't on the Christians and the Jews in America, then we've got another thing coming, because they had already zeroed in on the Christians and the Jews, and that just dovetailed again back into Psalm 2 And it's actually what you asked. Why are the aliens worried about Jesus Christ? What problem is he? He's supposed to be dead and not even here anyway. And here they are trying to get ready for his return when humanity, which really is insane most of the time, don't expect him back anyway.
Yeah, it is very, very strange how the people, well, it says in Psalm 2, though, why do the heathen rage? And why do the rulers take counsel together, basically, and try to eradicate this one name? As a police detective, you would say, well, maybe that's a clue. I always have thought that when you keep railing against someone or some nation, you should really look into it and see what the real deal is. And of course, the Israeli situation is kind of complex because I call it pre-tribulational Israel. It's really antichrist to the core, and was set up by the rich men of the earth. But God allowed it. God wants it there. And as he says in Jeremiah, he's going to use Israel to destroy the nations of the world, basically. And I think maybe that's one reason why the deep state so hates Israel, because once Israel gets reestablished fully and the temple goes in, they got to know that their end is very, very close at hand, even though the whole thing's kind of a deception. I don't know. It's very, very strange. What do you think of this shutdown concept? What's going on with that?
Well, it appears that really, more so than just being political, is actually a part of the coup itself to bring down the Donald Trump administration. I watched today, the Democrats already had placards, I saw one of them, and it had, they were calling the new shutdown, which hadn't actually gone into effect yet, the Trump shutdown. I mean, they already got the stuff printed up. I mean, they're going after Trump. They're going to blame Trump, because the Democrats and Republicans can't do their budget. They're going to blame the Trump administration for destroying the country, I guess, for not having a budget. And so, it's like you said, everything's upside down, It's just all reversed, and it's the Democrats and Republicans that don't have a budget, but of course it's Trump's fault. So here we go. But that's what I say is that's what I'm looking at. It appears that this play for shutdown of the government is to focus on Trump and try to discredit him more and more and remove him from office if possible. They got to get him out of there. He is literally, in the course of 1 year already, almost totally obliterated everything they took years to put together.
Yeah. Here it is in Isaiah 5:20, folks. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. That's what we're dealing with. I watched Durbin come on, and he said, and he lied directly to the American people. He said, well, the Republicans, they own both the House and the Senate. It's their fault. Well, that's absolutely untrue, because they have to have 60 votes. They only got 51 Republicans. But probably most of the American people wouldn't know that, and so they will. They'll blame Trump and they'll blame the Republicans, even though the Democrats are the ones who did all this. So, and when I watch this guy, he's one of their elder leaders, and he's sitting there deliberately lying to the American people about what's really happening. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. And that's what Obama was doing. He was turning everything upside down. And it appears to me that what Trump is trying to do, even though I have my suspicions about the ultimate goal here, is trying to right that which Obama did wrong. And as you said, they're all against Trump, totally against him. But what he's really trying to do is get back a lot of areas to the Constitution. And evidently the people don't want to heal the United States of America, Babylon the Great. They'd rather see it go down. A long time ago you said about spirits rising, and relating it almost to a domestic, where police officers will always tell you domestics are very dangerous because reason is not present. It's all emotions. And I'm sure you've dealt with domestics. Not fun to get involved in, I suppose.
Yeah, that's
think?
very true. Yeah, that's very true. And really, watching the news lately, watching what's playing out in Washington, D.C., to me, it almost puts me into culture shock, because it looks like I'm watching a massive, giant domestic. And they're very dangerous because, as I've told you before, there is no reasoning there. It's all emotion, and that's what we're seeing. And it appears, and you watch closely, this completely out of bounds hatred towards Donald Trump. And I mean, it's masses of people and groups and organizations. They hate Donald Trump, and not one of them, not even one, can tell you what Donald Trump did to them or their family. All they can do is rage at Donald Trump. It's a spirit, Stuart.
Yes. I suppose in some ways it's the spirit of Antichrist. It's rising, but it just doesn't take that form, or hasn't yet, but it's soon going to. Because under Obama, the spirit of Antichrist was really rising fairly rapidly. He was coming after everybody in the military. Everybody said, well, Obama's a Christian. No, he wasn't. Obama is not a Christian, folks. He never was. He hates Christians. And he said himself, if push comes to shove, I'm going to favor Islam. Well, that ought to tell you something about his faith. And he even said that he was an Islamic. So I don't know, again, it's deep state lies, and we know who the father of lies is. Jesus told us that Satan was a liar and a murderer from the very beginning. So we know who's running deep state. And it's just too bad that even these guys that are doing it don't realize what their fate is. But I got an article here that we should talk about, too. Biggest scandal in American history. Is this the KGB? Lawmakers explode after reading classified memo. Democrats tried to hide. People will go to jail. Have you heard any more about this?
Yeah, they're still. It was across the board all day long, and a lot of the people that have seen this memo, because of some of the information being classified, they can't reveal the information, but they say it is so shocking and absolutely beyond the pale of something like this happening in America, and the way that Obama and his administration weaponized I guess you could say the IRS, the DOJ, the FBI, and the CIA against the American people, Stuart, against the American people, and began to spy illegally against the American people, including Donald Trump and his people, as the election was ongoing.
Yeah, and of course it was under Obama that all these, if I recall right, maybe under Bush, I know none of them have ever, repealed any of this stuff, like the NDAA, like Homeland Security, like FEMA. Homeland Security, folks, was set up on purpose by Rand Corporation many, many years ago. It was just sitting on the shelf. They needed an incident to bring it out. And, of course, 9/11. Everything changed under 9/11. So, again, good becomes evil, evil becomes good. And all you got to do is see what's being taught our children in school, what's being taught in our universities. going out and smashing windows and burning up cars, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's good. The people that were in the way evidently deserved it, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Stuart, I wanted to just, you mentioned what's being taught. There was a guy on Lou Dobbs a little while ago, and he says he actually fled Cuba years ago to escape communism, and he said now recently he had sent his son to college in America, and his son returned as a communist.
Yes. Yeah, people don't realize. I don't know why parents are even sending their kids to public schools, because really all they are is propaganda schools now for the communists. It's a communist coup. They've infiltrated the pulpits. They've infiltrated our grade schools. They start in kindergarten, believe it or not. I've got several books on it. It's evil to the core. And the Teachers Association, I can't think of the name of it right now, but they even openly admitted that they're ranked socialists and communists. Well, that's what our kids are being taught. And so it's no surprise when the kids don't want the parents' older values, because the new technique is no values at all, which of course is the way the communists work. There aren't any values. There's only an agenda, and reaching that agenda, you do whatever you have to do to reach it. So you toss all your morality, all of it, find a lie about it. That's part of Islam too. It's okay to lie to everybody as long as you're advancing Islam. But I fear that America's in deep trouble right now. And what do you think? I mean, with this thing released, it says the Democrats attempted to prevent the full House of Representatives from even reading the classified House Intelligence Committee memo that details the abuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, by the upper echelons of the DOJ and the FBI under Obama. So what are they afraid of? Here's one of the comments that Representative Scott Perry said. You think about, is this happening in America, or is this the KGB? That's how alarming it really is. Wow.
Well, America has changed, Stuart. America has changed.
So it says that if this was released, and really everybody should demand that they release it, that people would be going to prison. Is this undoubtedly why the Democrats are up at arms? Because they don't want to, some of them don't want to go to prison?
Well, that's, on the other hand, Stuart, why are they after Trump so hard? And the only reasoning is that with Trump in there, they're not sure they won't go to prison or have other things occur in their lives that they didn't have planned. And, in the background, we continue to hear reports of clandestine activities going on to round up people. The rumors are still there. They're not going away. We don't have a lot of data on it, but there are those reports that are circulating.
Yeah, that there were a lot of sealed indictments going out, the military is being used, et cetera, but that's all kind of died down a little bit, I guess. I noticed that Soros is obviously out free, and he made a comment about the EU was about to collapse. So there are global problems everywhere, and kind of dangerous ones, I guess. I got an email, and this is all it said. I don't know if you saw it or not. Earth tilting to the south axis of rotation. It's off balance, and the oceans are in opposition. Does this have anything to do with the oceans going out on one coast, far, far out, almost beyond where the eye can see, and then on the opposing coast, they're having huge waves?
Well, it could be, Stuart. We continually, and And I've been noticing, too, the sun is much further south than it should be, especially at sunset and even late in the day. Everything's off. This tilt is really causing some problems.
Well, of course, when you get a wobble, it can wobble quite a ways, and then it comes back. So it's off maybe a couple of days, and then it goes back to where it's more normal. But people are reporting it all over the place. Even down in South America, we've got some couples down there, and they're reporting that the sun is just changing. And the moon is changing, too, by the way. They're all changing a little bit. And then it goes back to normal. Then it changes again. And you almost have to watch it day by day to catch it. And in a little bit of a wobble, just like Isaiah says, the earth wobbles. And now we're seeing confirmation of that. Weird stuff. Really weird stuff going on. The Bible codes. Let's get back to your friend there, and those predominantly are concerning North Korea and a possible trick and a possible war, I guess. And as far as I've heard, he is still making preps for a nuclear test or a missile launch. Is that correct, as far as you know?
Well, that's the latest I've heard, that there still is movement at those sites, and they're watching. Of course, at the same time, we seem to be moving assets into that region of the world. So, and as General Jack Keane said the last couple of days, he said it's kind of a quandary. He said, I can't understand moving all these assets into that region and not removing families of servicemen and some of our people out of that region.
Yes, you would think you'd want to bring your families home. I mean, I would. I mean, if I was a military general, I'd get my dependents out of the way, for sure. Here's something that I got, and it's he's not going to release everything that he evidently knows. But he says the person has served in FEMA supervisory positions for various disaster incidents. I was requested to not list these specific events. The means and method that this person used to reach out to me is very consistent with similar contacts with the DEA and Border Patrol. I want to stress that I will never burn a source for a headline. However, I receive very little direction on permissible releases of information. So I've taken 3 days to decide what I could safely reveal without exposing the identity of the whistleblower. Anyway, he says it contains content that is true and is consistent with other reports that we are on the verge of a presidential coup. However, this source steadfastly maintains that Sam's Club, remember they closed 63 Sam's Clubs without any notice whatever? Remember that? Just a few days ago?
Yes, I do.
Okay, he says, will serve multiple functions, and this is very consistent with Jade Helm. The stores are being retrofitted for different purposes depending on the store's location. Some stores will serve as military supply depots where weapons are stored to be used by personnel that will one day occupy those stores. The stores will have work conducted by private contractors in which the duties will be highly compartmentalized so as not to tip off the workers and then the public as the true nature of the work. The second and much more ominous purpose of Sam's Clubs will be to serve as holding stations for political prisoners or prisoners of war. Prisoner of war would be, of course, enemy combatants, and that takes us right back to NDAA, where they can round up whoever they want, whenever they want. And Jeremiah and the Bible prophets against the United States, a.k.a. Babylon the Great, say that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to round up God's people, both Jews and Christians, and probably anybody that likes the Constitution at all. He says he attended many high-level meetings in which the use of these stores was discussed. The relating documents were not distributed to the attendees for security reasons. The information contained many operational details I was told not to print because it would give away the identity of the whistleblower. Suffice it to say, I have previously written about some of these procedures in articles, and he's talking about the military documents, organization structure of traditional detention facilities that are called FEMA camps. I said what this source does say is that these stores and their conversions are ominous in their intent and have raised serious concerns within FEMA itself. Another interesting point was that this source stated that the briefings never contained personnel that would report directly to the White House. What do you make of that? I make of that this is deep state, and they're circumventing Trump.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Wow. Well, we've known about the not Sam's Club, but Walmart's, because they were actually used as collection points even during the hurricanes down south. And there were a couple people who went on YouTube that were part of the forces that were helping people and said that they were just putting these people on trucks. They went to a Walmart and they were never seen again. And we haven't heard anything about it. And, of course, mainstream media, being in the pocket of deep state, would never say anything about it. But, you know, it is kind of interesting to me that you have all these huge incidents of weather that really does a lot of damage. They cover it for a short time, and then you never hear about it again. They just simply move on. So, anyway, a word to the wise folks. Sam's Club closings were kind of weird to me because of the way they did it. But what I'm getting at, Larry, and I want your opinion on this one, why would they be doing this now in relationship to this document, which is going to get a lot of people arrested, unless they're going to try something on Trump fairly quickly now? What do you think? I mean, it all seems to connect together.
Yeah, it's it's very interesting, and let me tie this in too with what you're talking about. There are new reports coming out now that Obama is back in the U.S. and is ready to enter the fray, so to speak, in the political realm. So apparently Obama is making a comeback. What kind of comeback, we're not sure, but it seems like they are on the verge of attempting to more solidify this coup. And, you know, what people don't understand is there's been a coup to bring Trump down even before he became the president. And since he became president, they haven't been able to do that, and they're still working on it. It's never stopped. It's never ceased. It's ongoing. And the deep state really has a problem. If they cannot stop him soon, they may be the ones that are exposed and actually wind up in some of these camps. But we don't know. We don't know how this is going to go, but it does appear that there's a big push that may include Obama coming up very, very soon. And another thing, too, I was going to mention, Stuart, recently on Judge Piro's show on Fox News, she had Sheriff or former Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and she asked him about the Hawaiian alert, and he said he wasn't surprised because Hawaii wasn't too good at hiding that fraudulent birth certificate of Obama's anyway, and boy, she freaked out and shut that down and wouldn't let him talk about that at all. So they are still hiding everything about Obama and where he came from. It's totally concealed, which indicates to me if they're that busy still trying to hide this stuff about Obama and his source, then is he on the verge of coming back again?
I think he is. I just have that feeling, and I remember the dream I had. I don't ask anybody to believe it was from the Lord, but it was really a strange dream, and I was teaching Bible prophecy. I don't know who to or where even, and Obama walks in the room, big smile, comes over to me, and I said, "You know, you're Lucifer, don't you?" And he just smiled and said, "Yes, I know." And that was the end of the dream. And others, many Christians have had visions about him being the lawless one. All we need here is an economic collapse, a war that Trump, gets into, and they'll blame Trump for it. And I think the American people, if they were hit enough, would just plead for Obama to take office and settle it. After all, he's a man of peace. He's kind of like the Teflon man in a way, like Clinton was a Teflon man. Nothing sticks. No matter what you throw at him, it doesn't stick. And, he was probably hitting, somebody did a survey and said something like he had actually 35 impeachable offenses during his 8 years, and nobody ever touched him. And, of course, ever since Trump's been elected, impeach. So that just shows you the difference in how deep state has infiltrated everything. What they don't realize is they're part of God's plan as punishment for the American people. And then he's going to punish them, and they're going to wish they'd never been born. But they're too naive and too biblically illiterate to understand that part of it. But they soon will. Here's another headline. This is kind of interesting. Submarine off New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland coasts. U.S. Navy is deploying 9 anti-submarine aircraft off the East Coast, fearing a sub-missile launch against the United States. Now, do you suppose this has something to do with Kimmy Boy, our whiz kid over there?
Well, we're having so many problems, Stuart. It could be North Korean, it could be an Iranian sub, it could be Chinese, or it could be Russian. We've got a lot of enemies, and really the way we're going into this with the government about to shut down and Trump having no support, zero support and backup, this is a good time for them to start a war against the United States because as a number of the Democrats have even said, we're bringing America to a place of chaos, and they really are.
So why would, now this is the first paragraph, the east coast of the United States may be subjected to an attack by submarine-launched missiles, and the U.S. Navy has scrambled numerous P-8A Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft to repeatedly search the coastal waters from New York City to Washington, D.C. all day long. They wouldn't do that unless they got a tip, would they?
Well, they may have had a sighting or what. We don't have the coastal defenses, Stuart, that people, I think, assume we do. We're almost defenseless after, all the time of Clinton and all the time of Bush and all the time of Obama. We were basically brought down, as General Keane said today. He said, we've got a weaker military than we've had in 75 years. He said, and they're not even providing the money to build what Trump is wanting to build. He said, we are decimated and defenseless almost. And most of their planes and ships, Stuart, are broke.
Yes, and that people don't realize that either.
No, we're almost defenseless, and the people are comatose on their couches. And that began way back with Art Bell, but it's got worse.
Yeah, I remember his comment about people wouldn't even get off the couch to change a channel on a program they didn't even like, and I thought, well, that's about true. Getting back to this article, this is kind of interesting take with Congress having voted to release a classified internal memo which lays out the rampant abuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, searches, and a deep state facing public exposure of the hideous shenanigans they've been pulling against our own country. It is feared that deep state will pull out all the stops to launch a false flag attack against our own country just to kill the story and divert public attention of how they have been spying on the American people, and worse, how they have intentionally tried to overthrow presidential election. I'd go further, overthrow the government of the United States, because that's what their intent was. Topple the United States, imprison the people, and the New World Order comes up. I don't know. What do you think?
I think they're somewhat ignoring Yellowstone and all these other volcanoes that haven't erupted in America yet, and all of these fracture zones under America that continually are in a state of movement, and everybody standing on top of the ground are oblivious.
Yeah, as the Bible says, willfully ignorant. It's the same thing with anything in the Bible, salvation, prophecy. It indicates that you do have to study. You have to study to show yourself approved. And what it is they don't want to bother with it. And so they're ignorant. But the Lord does not wink at ignorance. So he's not winking at the American Christian, and I don't think he's winking at the apostasy within American Christians or the people themselves who have more or less just rejected the concept of Jesus Christ. In fact, most Christians, if you ask them, I was reading a survey, they don't even believe Satan exists. Now, that's kind of interesting, because if Satan doesn't exist, Jesus Christ was an idiot. He must have been a total liar, because he said Satan does exist. In fact, he dealt with it.
And one of the things that's really interesting, Stuart, and I'd like your opinion on this, we're watching, matter of fact, this was really interesting. I found it very interesting, is they actually came out today, President Donald Trump addressed the anti-abortion movement. They had a massive group of people in Houston, Texas, and had the people in Washington at the White House, and he actually came out and addressed and stood as pro-life in that speech and was against death in that speech, the abortions. And what was interesting, they announced it and said that he was the very first American president to stand up and announce pro-life, and said that meant in 45 years of the abortion industry that Donald Trump was the first one in 45 years to stand against that publicly as president of this country. And, it's something clicked when I heard 45, Stuart, and I thought, yeah, wait a minute. Donald Trump is also the 45th president of the United States, and Isaiah 45 pretty much backs up who Cyrus was. And if you look, at Isaiah 45 and Cyrus the Persian king and Donald Trump, all of this seems to be fitting together. And I looked up the number 45 in Ed Vallot's God's Numerics, which means to preserve or like a redemption of a kind. And I thought, what is all going on? This is so timely. These numbers, you just can't make them up, Stuart. Something is happening here.
Yeah, the Lord is telling everybody, and Trump is called in to preserve what's left of the Constitution, I guess. And evidently the American people don't want their Constitution, because that's what happens when you infiltrate the school systems. I think it was Joseph Stalin or one of those despots that said something about, well, give me a generation of children or two, and I got the whole thing in the bag. That's exactly what's happened. They infiltrated our schools. They've infiltrated all the way up to the university levels. And so when they graduate, they're all communists. They may not even know they're communists. Probably don't. But that's what they are, rank socialists. And so the attack on capitalism and all that, and of course, Trump is a rank capitalist. And I don't think people realize that one of the reasons Trump is fighting this is personal as well. Because if the communists win, he loses everything he worked to get. Because he is a capitalist. And it's fascinating how the Lord would choose Trump at the time he has. And as you have said, and I believe too, that there's a delay here to give the American people a chance to look. Trump is a great revelator of the corruption of our government. And yet the people, American people, I don't think they'll few of them stand up, of course, obviously. But by and large, I don't think they even care. Do you? I just don't think they care much.
Yeah, I watch that closely, Stuart, and, the American people are oblivious, it seems, to all of this. There's not much out of them. And of the church, well, where are they? Where are those voices? I don't know. But what's so interesting, too, Stuart, I was thinking, you mentioned the delay there, and I listened to Gil Broussard. I was in on that interview when Augusto interviewed him, and he was talking about a possible that the delay of the destroyer, as he calls it, Planet 7X, arriving at Earth, he said could possibly be 2020 or 2021, and which is a new time frame. And I was thinking, well, that's odd, because we don't know how long Trump this judgment cycle and all of this preservation and the coup and all of this that's ongoing in America. Right? Matter of fact, I'm kind of in shock that Trump's still in office. But if possible, that he has 4 years, that he actually is strong enough and the Lord protects him enough that they cannot eject him for 4 years. That is interesting now that Gil Broussard says this arrival date of the interloper or the destroyer has been moved up, it seems, to like 2020, and that's the election, Stuart, in 4 years.
Yeah. And when you read from the book of the Colburn, what people are facing or what they're going to face, it's not going to be good. And it says here, this is out of the book of the Colburn, at the time of the great destruction of the earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompass her about. The dragon was frightful to behold. It lashed its tail. It breathed out fire and hot coals, and a great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind. The body of the dragon, was withering in a cold, bright light, and beneath, on the belly, was a ruddy-hued glow, while behind it trailed a flowing tail of sparks. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick, darkened sky, all heaven and earth being made hot. The seas were loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful shrilling, trumpeting, which outpowered even the howling of the unleashed winds. Can you imagine that? Wow. And it says men were stricken with terror. They went mad. They went insane. at the awful sight in the heavens. And on it goes about what happened, how it broke the earth apart, and huge volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and it virtually annihilated humanity. And it's happened before, and as the Egyptian sages centuries ago said, that the earth is destroyed periodically from time to time. But what's interesting about the Colburn is it talks about the preliminary signs, and we have them. All the preliminary signs. So that goes right into what Augusto's interview talks about. I would urge people to go to the appearance and listen to that interview, because what he's talking about is exactly what Isaiah 24 is talking about. It's in the book of the Colburn. We are going to see, hopefully not the Christians, but the world in general is going to see the destroyer. And Jesus said that this time around, it's going to be worse than it ever was previously in all of history. So what we're dealing with here is something far, far worse than anything that's ever occurred before. And if you go into Jeremiah, it says that this destroyer literally goes from town to town, nation to nation as the earth rotates. It destroys everything in his path. And few men are left. They call it, I think, the gold of Ophir or something like that. And I know Stan Dale mentioned something about that being extremely rare. So very few men are actually left on the planet after this. This is what the rich men of the earth are preparing for, folks. They're digging their tunnels. They're putting all this stuff on the ground and leaving you and I on the surface. Unfortunately for them, they're not going to make it either. They're going to be destroyed. I'd rather be upstairs, I guess, on the earth looking at it. Any final comments? We got a couple minutes left.
Well, I was going to mention also Barry Rothman is working a new Torah code called God from the Future, and he said in this new one he talks about this signal from the future, and he ties in different things that he's talked to us before on a prior show, like the Time Cop movie. But what he's found is really interesting. We can talk another time about it. He's found the word sapphire in this signal from the future, and he seems to tie in or dovetail in this sapphire being as possibly an angelic being that delivered a message to him, and the sapphire as being part of the breastplate also.
Yes, that would be one of the priest's breastplates. Could be somebody like Melchizedek. You know, I mean, we're nearing the time of the end, folks. Whether people like it, don't like it, it's immaterial. The reality is exactly what the Bible says it is. And people have ignored it to their peril, and they've ignored the commands of Jesus Christ likewise. Even the Christians, by and large. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have tossed them aside with a terse, I never experientially came to know who you are. He got rid of them that way. I mean, no mercy there. Cold, analytical, no mercy whatever. So it's nothing to toy with. And when you read the book of the Colburn and the Bible, Isaiah 24 and Revelation and all of it, you come to the conclusion that mankind really doesn't stand a chance. Jesus Christ is the only escape. There is none other. He's it. No other truth you need to find. No other truth you need to know. Any last word there, Larry, before we close it?
Well, I'll just tell people to, as we go through this weekend, whether the government closes at midnight tonight or remains open, we don't know, but I would just advise them, don't unbuckle your seatbelt.
Yeah, you got that right. Wow. Okay, folks, well, thanks for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you next week, the Lord willing. Good night, everyone.